Welcome in. Today's guest is Lara Brenckle Malmont. I got that right. Yes. Okay,
Yes.
good. She kind of has an eclectic writing history, uh, starting off with poetry, working in journalism, and then you have written a novel that is about your grandfather's childhood.
That's
So,
correct. Yes.
so let's just kind of dive into it. And we'll talk about your book first. What inspired you to write this story and then kind of tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. Well, my inspiration is my family. My I was very close to my grandmother, my Grammy Helen, my dad's mother, and we just always had a great relationship. And my grandfather died when my dad was 17, so I never got the chance to know him. I did know that he himself, my grandfather, had been orphaned as well. So there were these sort of broken links in my family tree. And I don't know, I always sort of say I was a journalist pretty much from birth. So this idea of a mystery to solve was always really intriguing to me. And I was probably about 9 years old, and I found a picture of my grandfather in Grammy's attic, and it was. I kept it. Like I've taken it. I took it with me to college. I took it with me, when I moved out of the house. It's sort of just been with me, and I always sort of felt like he's this little guardian angel on my shoulder. And when I found the picture, I asked Grammy all sorts of questions. I always say I had 1,000 questions and she had 100 answers. And when her answers ran out, I said, Grammy, I'm going to come back to Pittsburgh because even though I was born there, we had moved away by that time here to where I live now in central Pennsylvania. And I said, Grammy, I'm going to come back to Pittsburgh. And when I'm a grown up, and I said, I'm going to figure it all out. And that's where it started, but that's definitely not where it ended. But my inspiration began as a genealogy project, but as we get into it, there were some discoveries, information, and actually, my grandfather was at the center of something that I could have never even imagined. And once I discovered that element, then it became a story that transcended my own family and, in my mind, spoke to lots of different types of families and lots of different people's experiences across a myriad of systems at a very specific point in history.
The Definitely kind of ominously curious.
Yes, indeed.
But no,
Foreshadowing.
yes, my brain is going 100 different directions and what that means. But um, so um, sorry, kind of blanking here. What was probably the most difficult scene for you to get right when you were writing that book?
Well, the thing with historical fiction, some some people say that it's a little bit like writing on hard mode. You can write, well, let me backtrack. Every genre has its conventions. Every genre has its fans that will be very, very adamant about, well, it's got to be like this, and this doesn't work, and blah, 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 blah. But there's that extra oomph when you're talking about historical fiction. So
Mhm.
I spent lots of time with old maps and old photographs and things that are called Sanborn maps. They were a insurance type of map where literally every home in the city and every business was coded, and you could trace the trajectory of a neighborhood based on those Sanborn maps. So I'm sitting here going, well, if it's in 1915 like this and 1920 like this, like what's the likelihood that it really could have changed? So it was a lot of the fact checking. And I mean, I literally emailed a guy whose specialty was nothing but Pittsburgh bridges. And, and this is also the part that I love. I asked him, okay, if somebody was coming from Troy Hill to the Strip District in Pittsburgh in 1923, which bridge would they take? And he sent me the answer. So it was it was difficult because, I am a journalist. I check facts. That's more than anything, that's the most important thing to me. But I also really enjoy that digging. So just getting a lot of the material in Three Rivers home, especially the physical parameters of the city of Pittsburgh and the era in which this takes place.
Okay. Can I see the cover of your book? I see you have it on there.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It is.
It's I still take a look at it and marvel a little bit, but it is actually based on a real picture. I follow a fabulous Facebook page called The Odd, Mysterious, and Fascinating History of Pittsburgh. It's ex I found it, I think has it been 20? No, it's only been about 10 or 11 years that it's been in existence. But man, I tell you what, it is right up my alley. And putting up pictures of old Pittsburgh, that's actually what drew me into it initially, was because here was this guy, his name's John Shalkowski, and he's a historian. He works for some of the I mean he had a day job as well, but he also did a lot of the historical societies in the area. And so he had a lot of material that was in the vein of what I was researching as I was moving that research forward. Some days he'd throw something up and he'd like, here's a look at East Liberty in 1917. And I was like, oh, thank God. So he's actually thanked in I haven't got the chance to speak to him yet, but he's actually, and the Facebook page and are shouted out here in the acknowledgments because it was a wealth of research and things to point me to. uh, I knew a lot. In fact, actually, when the initial research started for this book, I was actually living in Pittsburgh because I did exactly what I said. In 2006, I had the opportunity to go back to Pittsburgh as a working adult. I went to work for one of the newspapers there, and my office was in the Allegheny County Courthouse. And I figured one day, I just sort of had this epiphany. It's actually kind of a tough day. It was a day where I was feeling not so great about just a lot of things. And I put my head down on my desk and I was like, I just don't know if this is it. I just don't know if this is the right thing. And with my eyes closed, that picture that I carried of my grandfather for, X many years just kind of floated up right in front of me. And I opened my eyes and I sat straight up and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Every answer I could ever want is 3 stories below me. So go. And I did. I had to come in early in the morning and my shift hadn't started yet. So luckily, and I've had about a half hour before it officially did. So in that half hour between when county offices opened and when I had to be back at my desk, I ran and thought of the first place I could look, which was the Register of Wills and Recorder of Deeds office. And I basically said, "Hey, this is well, my grandfather's name is Philip Brenckle, and he was born Filippo Arturo Venezia, and so or Philip Venezia, as he appears. That's one of the things I learned throughout this process is that names didn't really stabilize in terms of how they were consistently spelled across records, basically until after World War II, when a lot of people just started using like whatever name and spelling, they put down for their war records or whatever. But it became a lot more consistent after World War II. Pre World War II, it could be a challenge. So I gave the guys behind the counter, his name. They brought me to some, old dusty volumes, and then they're like, "Oh, hey, look." They showed me how to work and this was, like I said, this was in 2006. So the internet was okay, but not great. And there was still a lot of manual labor in the first couple of years for this. And so eventually these guys were leaning over my shoulder and I'm telling them about my grandfather and telling them about, oh, he was orphaned. I never met him. I want to find out. And they're like, well, hey, look at this. There's a will here. Did you know that looks like your great grandfather had a will? And I said, I'm sorry, what?
Nah.
And, and they said, yeah, give us a minute. And the guy ran back and it was one of those pneumatic tube systems, so he puts the little slip in the paper and he shoots up the tube. And, a couple minutes later, it shoots back up and he's like, well, here you go. And it's this, sort of long skinny folder that looks about like this, and it has my great grandfather's name on it, which I knew because one of the very few records we did have was my grandfather's baptismal certificate. And my grandfather was adopted, but he was adopted at 16, so it was never a secret. We knew that he had his birth parents and what their names were. And
Mm,
so there it was this handwritten will that basically left money that he had been sending back to Italy, as Italian American immigrants and a number of other immigrants did and still do, to
mm,
save some money in a bank in Italy. And he basically provided for my great grandmother a sort of immediate payment. And then he put the rest of the money that he had in trust for my grandfather and his siblings. He had a brother and a sister. Sister was older, the brother was about 18 months younger. And then the interest off of that half that the kids had was supposed to go to my great grandmother until all three kids became of age, and then they would get basically the principal. And I mean, I was standing there shaking because just even that little bit alone, I'd never known. So I like by that time it was time for me to go back to work. So I I hustled across the street, and I have my old blue Nokia brick phone, and I'm calling my parents as I'm walking across like Grant Street, and I'm like, "Mom, Dad, guess what?" So that's how it started. And
mm.
then it was off like a shot from there.
So how long did it take you to write this book? I mean, since you were kind of doing that research 20 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, well, there was a lot of picking it up and putting it back down. Like I said, the the initial research took about 3 months because I did all this very, very quickly. This was before I had kids. It was even before me and my husband were married. And so all my free time I could just spend kind of doing this. And my husband is very, very understanding, very, very supportive, very much, in my corner. So he was like, you do whatever you need to do. And so I wrote an article about that summer of research. I actually reconnected with some Brenckle family relatives that were the blood relatives of the family that adopted my grandfather. That is why my
Mhm.
last name is Brenckle and not Phoenicia, is because the Brinkles adopted my grandfather and his brother. And then went to a family reunion and just had this great summer. And I thought, oh, okay, now I have this cool little story to tell at cocktail parties. I've answered a number of questions, but there were still a lot of holes. But I got a new job. We moved here. My husband and I moved, well, he was my boyfriend at the time, moved back from Pittsburgh to this area. We both got new jobs here, working for newspapers. My husband went to work and still is working at the Carlisle Sentinel. He's their chief photographer. And then I got a job at the Harrisburg Patriot News. So we had new jobs. We got married. And then I picked up the research again about 3 or 4 years after the initial burst. And it was, again, mostly because I just sort of wanted to fill in some familial blanks. But it was at that point I was sitting on my sofa. My husband, again, being a photojournalist, he is out for football, sports, and things like that. So this was before, again, we had our daughter, and I was home alone on Friday night, and I had a laptop, and I was just sitting there, again, Googling misspellings of my grandfather's name. And this article popped up on Google because by then, it was about 2009, 2010. And Google had started a project to take microfiche from libraries and scan it and then Google search it. Like you could Google search a microfiche, unlike anything else you'd ever done before. I think it was called the Google News Project. And this article popped up. And again, I'll never forget the headline. It said, Cause of brink cause of fatal Brenckle farm fire not fixed. And I said, I'm sorry, what now? And I read the article, and it turned out that at the time, foster parents of my my grandfather, their home burned down 2 weeks before Christmas. They
Oh,
had taken my grandfather and his brother and five other children who were members of a single family, and then another singleton child. So they had eight foster children, and two of the foster children died in the fire.
Oh,
The reason that they and other folks in throughout Pittsburgh had that many children is because Allegheny County practiced something called farming out. And that is exactly what it sounds like. Children who were dependent and in Allegheny County's custody were, if they didn't have anyone to pay the county back for their care, meaning like you didn't have a parent or some other relative who was willing to pay the county for taking care of these children, the children were sent out to work. And they were sent out to work on farms primarily as labor, or sometimes they would be sent to factories, coal mines, anything you can kind of think of in terms of like what early 20th century America would be having. A lot of the girls went to homes to be maids and those types of things. And the county paid families that took these children in $5.60 a week per child per week.
back
So
then
you
that
can
would have been
imagine, you know,
considerably more money. Yeah.
oh yeah. And so the fire then spurred my complete and utter attention. It stole my attention for weeks. And I came without giving too much of the book away. I came to find out that this fire became front page news for 6 weeks all across. I mean, there were a dozen newspapers in Pittsburgh at the time. And then it got picked up by the Associated Press, and I found articles, around the state, beyond Pittsburgh, and even sometimes small blurbs all around the country. Um, I mean, again, talk about absolutely stunning information. My father and my aunt had absolutely no clue that their father had survived something like this when he was a child. He never spoke of it. And I mean, by this time, of course, I mean, Grammy unfortunately had passed away when I was a sophomore in college. So she, again, really never knew all of this that I found. But then that once I found the fire, I also found the initial thought that, oh, this is so much bigger than me. This
Hmm.
is so much larger than my own family, because the concept of farming out, I mean, you've seen it play out in other types of situations. You've had the orphan train, you had
Right.
the Tennessee Tennessee baby home, and like Georgia Tan. There are multiple instances across American history, British history, all of history, where institutions decide that there are certain types of children who deserve childhoods and certain types of children who don't.
Right.
And I think it is stunning for folks. I think it's one of the reasons why you're seeing this huge resurgence. I mean, there are so many people that are interested in genealogy and family stories. And I mean, my God, Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates is a hugely popular show. And before that, Who Do You Think You Are? And you have tons and tons of books and movies that are written on stories that come from our past. And I think that's one of the best things, that we look to the past and we kind of find strength for the future, and realizing that, I mean, and it's not just, oh, they had it worse and we can get through whatever we're going through now. But
Right.
I've sort of come to at least my own personal realization that people are people, all across the ages and centuries. And people still want the same things. They want to be loved, they want a place to belong. And that's in fact actually what a lot of Three River Home, it's about finding a place to belong, or what it feels like to miss the place where you do. It really is, in spite of some of these challenging situations that my grandfather went through, it really is a love letter to Pittsburgh, love letter to my hometown, and what it means to miss Pittsburgh, although you do not have to be, I would stress that you do not have to be from Pittsburgh to enjoy this book, because that's back to my other point that people are people that, I mean, if you grew up somewhere, especially if you grew up like maybe in a larger city or a city that has a pretty significant immigrant population from, from whatever era, you'll understand some of these like themes and some of the thoughts and some of the neighborhood feeling that you try to pull in, that I tried to pull into this book.
Well, would you mind reading a little bit from it
Oh, yeah,
for us?
sure. Sure, sure. So I will read the prologue and like basically the first basically page and a half. That's all
Okay.
right.
No, that's
Okay.
fine.
All right. So prologue. Right. Frankie Fortunato knew exactly one thing about March 14, 1907, the day Pittsburgh's Three Rivers tried to swallow the city whole. It was the same day he'd been born. He sensed frenetic urgency and heavy breathing and panicked voices, his mother's arms clutching him as the foaming water roared through downtown. They fled by rough board boat from their second floor apartment along 10th Street. Frankie's first clear memory was of movement, the sound of steel straining against the waves. Later, he tried to tell his mama, Angelina Fortunato, that he remembered the day he was born. That he recalled the sounds swirling around him as he entered the world. He heard them still in the uncontrollable moments when his heart raced. He tried to tell mama this, but she'd shush him with fierce "Malou, bad," Calabrian, the language of Angelina Fortunato's temper, before slapping Frankie's hand and sending him off to play with his little brother Joey. In their East Liberty apartment's scrub yard, he dug in the cindery dirt and ignored his 21 months younger shadow. There, despite neighbors saying the flood waters had never come that far, he found tiny, perfectly white clamshells. He kept every one he ever found in a tin blue flame matchbox, silent proof of his great truth. Frankie felt the tides. It was a crazy thing to believe in a landlocked city, one laced with river bridges swaying in a black winged wind. But whenever he closed his eyes, the roaring rhythm sped his heart. His life rushed back and forth. As soon as he was born, he knew. There was no rest, only watching and waiting for the next cataclysm to carry the world away. Chapter 1, Frankstown Avenue, Pittsburgh, August 1913. The night before Frankie Fortunato stole his father's concertina, the stars fell over East Liberty. He'd always wanted to see a shooting star, but it felt impossible this far into the city. The three tall double hung windows that formed a cozy corner of their second floor apartment along Frankstown Avenue usually reflected Pittsburgh's factory forged starshine. Frankie had been up before dawn that morning, thanks to Joey kicking him across their shared mattress and their sister Maria's snoring. She had her own bed, tucked in the alcove, not only because she was older than them both and a girl, but mostly because she'd been born with hips that didn't sit straight. It hurt her to walk most days, which is why Frankie could forgive both her snoring and the unshared bed. Almost. Hot mornings like this, he wasn't so sure. He padded from the bedroom into the front room's hexagonal space, past the worn cherrywood sofa and its scratchy floral print, and a pair of overstuffed chairs whose mismatched patterns Mama covered with clean sheets. Papa had left the window's upper sashes open in hopes of pulling out the stuffy air, but it was no match for August in East Liberty. Climbing onto the kitchen table, his foot grazed the broad backed chair. It squealed against the wood floor. Frankie's breath and movement stilled. When no sound emerged from Mama and Papa's room, he exhaled. Frankie hauled the window's lower sash open, and its glass caught the shadowy city street's reflection. Frankie's dark eyes, hair, and old face, so like those of his siblings, overlaid it, lit by the rising sun, turning the eastern sky's edge from steel-fired red to soft summer pink. Frankie moved until all 4 feet of his body filled the window's open frame, legs dangling against the rough brick, and he turned his face toward the sky. A milk delivery cart jangled past, its horse pausing slightly as its massive hooves crossed the streetcar tracks embedded in the brick street. Closing his eyes, he breathed in his tiny corner of Pittsburgh coming alive. It stretched just 2 blocks in each direction, but he loved it all. The scent of baking bread from a neighbor's kitchen, the loamy smell of animals from the livery stables, and the damp, vinegary whiff from the saloon down the block. When he opened his eyes again, a glittering blaze arced above. Frankie gasped and shut his eyes. He had one chance. I wish it would always be like this. From behind him, Frankie heard Mama yawn and her iron bed rattle. He turned, pushed himself back onto the table, and shut the lower window sash softly behind him. His bare feet landed with a soft thump. And that was when he spied the open door of the lowest kitchen cupboard. Papa's concertina rested in its storage box on the shelf, its gleaming brass hardware begging to be unclasped. Papa had been teaching him to play these last few weeks, and Frankie had gotten those four chords down almost perfectly. Men played on stoops all the time. Frankie felt that he was ready to do the same. Nabbing the short boxy case by its leather handle, he gently shut the cupboard door and tiptoed back into their shared bedroom. He had to wait for Papa to leave for work, of course, but he also needed help. If only Joey would hurry and wake up.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Um, when you were writing that scene originally, did it always kind of sound like that, or has the character in the scene evolved for you since then, since you first started writing
Well, it's interesting. The prologue, I put it in and took it out and put it in and took it out. And, there's all sorts of people have feelings about prologues.
it?
So, um, eventually, once I did, so I took it out when I was pitching the novel. But once I landed my contract with my publisher, with Sunbury Press Books and their Milford House print, and I was assigned an editor, she and I had lots of conversations, and I told her that I had this extra piece, and she said, "Well, let's see what it looks like and see how it fits into the rest of the book." She really, really liked it. I really, really, I liked it from the beginning because there were basically the beginning of the book and and the very end of the book were pretty much unchanged since the first draft.
Okay.
But the first pages of the first chapter, I actually didn't write until last summer
Okay.
because I started with one scene, and that scene is still in here, but I didn't. It still didn't feel like the right place to begin. I mean, people liked it. People, I have wonderful critique groups. I had beta readers. I had marvelous, marvelous feedback. And people were like, I really like this, but it still didn't feel right. And Abby, my editor, was like, is there something else? And so actually, I got to weave a lot of my own personal experience because it's historical fiction and there is that fiction element. I did get to weave a few of my personal experiences into the book. And so actually the night I wrote that was the night that there was a meteor shower that was visible here in our part of Pennsylvania. And my daughter and husband and I were out in the backyard and like we were watching the stars fall, right above us. And when we were done and we went back inside and this is how a lot of times I would write, especially as a kid, like all of a sudden something came into my brain and I was like, okay, I gotta go, I gotta write. And so that's how that scene took shape, was off a very real scene of watching the stars fall here in Carlisle.
You mentioned a publisher.
Mhm.
Are they kind of a small press? Are they a bigger publisher? Um,
Well, they're an independent press, and actually, they're the largest independent press in Pennsylvania.
okay.
And they have a nationwide reach, and but lots and lots of local authors.
What kind of books do they usually prefer to contract on? Because
Well,
you have all sorts of different writers and they're always looking for a publisher out there. So just for anybody who's
oh,
listening.
they have a number of imprints. Milford House, which is the imprint that I'm under, that is historical fiction, and it's also mysteries. In fact, actually, I was on their podcast, Mysteries and Histories. So they have a specific podcast that's dedicated to that aspect. They have Catamount Press, which is for Appalachian type tales, especially the focus on Northern Appalachia. They have, oh my goodness, I'm going to leave out a whole lot, but I guess suffice it to say that they represent many genres, there are multiple imprints, and there are nonfiction imprints, there's Christian fiction imprints. In fact, actually, a friend of mine just signed a contract with them to publish a Christian historical fiction that's based also on her on her family member. So that'll be forthcoming. So there are a lot of opportunities for. I mean, I would recommend, if you have if people are looking for a publisher, check out Sunbury Press Books, check out their submission criteria, and take a shot, because I mean that's one of the things that I always say is, why not you? Why not me?
Can you go into a little detail about how you got hooked up with that press and how your experience with them has been?
Right. I mean, it's been wonderful. I got hooked up with them through an organization that I've been a member of for a number of years called Pen Writers, and it is here in Pennsylvania, as the name implies. And it's a great organization that helps people who are interested in the craft and practice of writing, and also for those who are interested, the business of publishing and publication, whether you're going to do that independently through, like your through a self-publishing arrangement, or if you are, like I was, pursuing traditional publication. And they had wonderful conference, and they still have. They actually are going into their 40th year, and or hosting their 40th conference this coming year. And so at these conferences, you get the opportunity to pitch agents and publishers, and we've had people land all sorts of fabulous deals and opportunities. And so at the 2023 conference, 2023, no, it was I'm sorry, 2024, the 2024 conference, I again took the opportunity to pitch some of the folks that were in the lineup, including Lawrence Knorr, who is the publisher of Sunbury Press. And then I sent my pitch, and I was excited because he asked for a full, and that's always a very exciting thing, when somebody wants to see the whole thing. So
Right.
it was fingers crossed. And then they get it. I mean, just like any other publisher or agent, they get a fair few. So I heard back in late April of 2025, and by the next conference, which was in Pittsburgh in 2025, I was able to tell my friends who had been like so supportive and so amazing throughout the process that I got a contract, and it was fantastic. So, but before all that happened, there was rewriting, there was critique groups, there was beta readers. Some of the first instances of this book, I'm very fortunate to have friends and family members who have real professional experience in the publishing world.
Right.
Those were the first places that I started. And again, also coming from a journalism background, I also had some fellow journalists who were kind enough to read my book. One of the first was one of my former colleagues at the Patriot News and friend Dave DeCook. He is a author. He does a lot of, actually he does nonfiction books, and he's done all sorts of things. And so brave soul, he was the first person that I shared a draft with, and he gave me some lovely feedback. My brother-in-law, who is an author as well, a traditionally published author, Paul Malmont, he read a first draft, and actually my late mother-in-law did too. Unfortunately, she's since passed away, but Valerie was a cozy mystery author, and her and Paul and just everybody, all my in-laws were very, very supportive. I mean, as were my parents and my family. My parents, of course, they probably read every iteration, and now my dad just carries my books around in his trunk. And so does my mom. My mom actually sold a copy at my daughter's school field day.
And it'd be nice if you could just like give everybody, copies of your books and be like, just sell these out for me. I say that to my friends all the time because
Right,
they're much
right.
better. They're much better at speaking events and everything than I am. And so I'm like, so my best friend, for example, she comes with me to most of my book signings, and I just let her do the talking, and then I sign the book when people are ready to buy it because she talks about my book so much better than I do. I get asked the question about my book, and I'm like, I have no idea. It was like, I swear I wrote it, but I couldn't tell you what it was about, you know. And she'll just go on and then she sells it for me, and I'm like, yay,
Thank
thanks.
you.
I'll just sign it.
It is amazing to have like folks who are that supportive. That's also one of the other cool things that has come about because of this book is, I mean, the book itself is very much about the family you're from and then the family you build and how those
Yes.
things kind of come together or come apart. And this book built a family. It had my family, but then there are all my amazing friends and my colleagues who were, either just giving me encouragement just generally, and those who gave me material support. In fact, one of my critique partners, JD, he is an educator, and I had kind of put the book down, and it was very, very far. I'd done some pitching, I'd done all this stuff, but you know, life gets in the way. I mean, part of the reason why it did take so long is because, I switched jobs several times as I moved up in my career. I had a child, and all of that comes with it. And so I kept putting it down, but I kept always kept coming back to it. But about a year and a half, oh, actually no, I guess maybe 4, 5 years ago, things were a little challenging, and with all sorts of work stuff and whatnot, and if and just also just other life. We were coming out of COVID. I did actually do a pretty significant overhaul during COVID, like a lot of folks did. I
Mhm.
used all that free time, all that free time, to do a pretty significant rewrite. And by then, I had gotten connected with a critique group, and they were very, very helpful. We continued during COVID, and that really, I mean, at least for me, gave me a lot to look forward to and connect, human connection during that time. But,
Yes.
after all of that, and there were a few other things too that, life was a little bit challenging, and I had just sort of I'd gotten some rejections, and I was like, is this really ever going to happen? I maybe, but and then JD reached out with an email. He's like, hey, what's going on with Frankie's? Like, me and my wife, we got to know. And so he's like, we will go through this like line for line with for you. And I was like, I mean, I was shocked. I was moved, and it gave sort of a new life to the project and
Mhm.
reinvigorated my pursuit that, someone cared that much, um, cared about Frankie, cared about my grandfather. And I did keep coming back to him. I mean, in some ways, sometimes I think the project lasted that long because I kind of didn't really want it to end. It was a lot of fun. It was, and it was also really fulfilling. Yeah, like I said, I never got the chance to meet my grandfather. Grammy did tell me that out of the four grandkids on that side of the family, like I was sort of the most like him, temperament wise. I was, oh, he would have loved you. That's always what she said, and I felt that, and I missed that. Um, and it was the book and being with him in the time when I was doing the research and the writing. It was comfortable, and like being there with him. And I always sort of said that if nothing ever did come of it, I got to spend 10 years in his company. He never sadly lived to teach me how to ride a bike or teach me how to go fishing, but taught me how to write a book. And that meant everything. And so, but after, especially after that, I sort of realized that the lessons in my grandfather's life are the same in mine, that even if it takes a really long time, you can't give up on the things that you really, really want. And you got to keep going for it. And you can't let anything get in the way, um, because the things that you really want to do, the things that you really want to have, are worth taking the risk for. And that's something that my grandfather did. And it's something Frankie does in the book.
So after this project, do you have ideas for other books that you're going to work on, or are you kind of settled with this one right now?
No, I definitely have other ideas. I actually probably have about four or five that are I would like to have Three Rivers Home become a trilogy. The research that I did throughout the process, I mean, not only did it give me this book in wanting to know, well, okay, here's what happened in this particular section of time. What else happened? What else did their lives, look like? The real people who gave some of the inspiration for this book, what happened to the rest of their lives? And in doing that, ended up building out a whole world for book two. So I'm actually, this August, I'm going on a writing retreat with a friend of mine, and I will probably start writing that one, tentatively right now called Blessed Are the Broken Things, and it'll take place in the 1940s, right in the World War II years, and
Okay.
then the third one after that, taking place just ahead of the Kennedy assassination in Vietnam.
Okay. So your next
And
book is kind of gonna, sorry.
oh, no, I was going to say, and then I also have ideas for two other books that are completely different and had nothing to do with this world that I built.
Okay. Will they be kind of similar stories? Or like, are you completely gonna change genre and try something different?
Well, the one book takes place in the like night from like in the early 90s, which technically now counts as historical fiction. I'm so
Don't say
sad.
that.
I know, really, right?
It makes me
And
feel so
so,
old.
yes, yes, I'm they so old here. But yeah, so that is, I guess I would say that a lot of these novels are coming of age novels, growing up, realizing where you fit in the world. I think all of these books, I mean, even the ones that will be part of the what I hope will be the trilogy that starts with Three Rivers Home, uh, they're all about finding your place in the world and finding the people who will help you stand in that place and stand with you in that place. Um, the book that takes place in the 90s, I'm well, I have a very specific idea, but it involves a very specific piece of intellectual property that I'm not exactly sure I'm going to be able to use. So I
Oh,
might have to adjust and make it a girl who's in love with a television show that is kind of sort of not really like the TV show that I have in mind.
okay.
Sort of, I'm just trying to think. There are some books that are like it, like oh boy, I can't think of them off the top of my head. But then I also have another one that again is it's more of a coming of age novel about a babysitter who has to confront the realities of the families that she babysits for, and especially when that particular one particular family has a situation that no 15-year-old girl should have to figure out how to manage. So those are all they all have outlines. Actually, a lot of them have first chapters drafted, so we'll see how
Okay.
far I go. But I write for a living and I write for fun, and this is fun for me, and I love digging into different corners of my imagination.
And you kind of started off with writing poetry, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Uh, did you ever publish any of that? Was it ever put in, like maybe collectively? Did you ever
Yeah,
do
actually,
that?
that was my first taste of published life. Oddly enough, between poetry and journalism, I've been professionally published since I was 14 years old. Because when I was 14, my very first poem was in the Cincinnati library. The Cincinnati library system had a high school and junior high literary magazine called Chalk Dust. And so in eighth grade, when I was living in Cincinnati, uh, that was it was it was an assignment, everyone had to do it, but I was really into it because I had been writing poetry for a number of years already. And so I put the submission in, and I think I was one of two from our school that ended up getting in. And then I submitted again. Yeah, and I think I was in Choctaws three times. And I was in my high school Ursuline Academy. I was in their literary magazine. And then I was in a collection of essays that were collected about the Ursulines are an order of nuns, and they have schools kind of across the country. And so I believe there was a anniversary essay collection for the Ursulines as a institution. And so one of the essays that I wrote about Ursuline was included in that. And then when I went to college, I was published, a poem of mine was published in the college's literary journal. And then poetry sort of started. And then, I mean, I still wrote it for myself. Oh, actually, you know what? Come to think of it, I just remembered. When I was in state college, I had the opportunity to do a poetry slam. I covered the poetry slam, and then as a reporter when I was working for the Center Daily Times. And so when I was done covering the show and I had filed my story, I went back and I said, "Hey, can I participate like as a contestant?" And I they were like, yeah, sure. And I had a number of pieces of poetry, and I think I came in second. So any opportunity I had to share uh, poetry, I usually would do that. But then eventually the short stories and the long form stories and journalism all took hold. But it's been a little while since I've written poetry, but I feel certain that it'll probably crop up again.
Within your professional career, writing in journalism, do you get to write kind of whatever you want? Are you assigned, certain things that your editor wants you to write? How much freedom do you get to choose with the things you want to write?
Well, I'm not a working journalist anymore. I was actually only a journalist for about a decade. In 2011, I transitioned over to corporate communications.
Okay.
So, different type of writing. With journalism, it was a solid mix. I had ideas that I brought forth, and I had things that my editors assigned to me. It in a lot of ways it does work the same way. At all, all the places that I've worked subsequent to working in newspapers, there has been that mix to a greater or lesser degree of, hey, I've got some ideas, and here are the things we need you to do. In a lot of ways, journalism and all the information and education I'd had provided the floor that I then built on for the corporate communications experience. A lot of the same skills overlap. I was sort of fortunate enough to also, excuse me, make the transition right when social media was taking hold in a way that moved beyond college campuses and news organizations. And so I did a lot of early social media management and reputation management and writing stories for social media. So I at this I almost say like at this point, if it's a type of writing I've done it. I mean, that's probably super hyperbole, but I have done a lot of different types of things, and I've enjoyed learning each new way to tell a story. That's the through line, is being able to tell a story. And I've had the opportunity at multiple places now to be able to do that. And it's a privilege every single time someone or an organization trusts me with their story. When I was a reporter and now as a corporate communications specialist, I don't take that responsibility lightly.
Um, I had a question and it just kind of went away. Give me a second, it'll come back. I told you it was that time of day. My brain is just, kind of shutting down. But
I say you're I mean it's 9 o'clock. I mean you've put in a full day, so my hat's
I
off to you.
have. Are you doing a whole lot of like book signing events or panels? Are you just mostly, marketing online? How do you go about getting your book out there?
Well, I think that's probably the benefit of having been both a reporter and like a communications and marketing professional is sort of putting the full force of all of those bits of learning to bear in putting Three Rivers Home out there. So the answer is yes. I've done panels, I've done presentations, workshops. I gave a workshop at the Pittsburgh Festival of Books, which was awesome. I It was a presentation, and actually I've given it two or three times now, and I'm giving it again this coming Saturday. It's basically the presentation is called Heroes in the Attic, using genealogical tools to craft marketable historical fiction. So that's one of the presentations that I give, and it's been well received each time I give it. I've attended some festivals and fairs. I have a book signing. In fact, actually, I will be on another podcast July 1st. It's called Gen X Journeys. They'll be talking
Nice.
about about some fun experiences being a member of that particular tribe. July 11th, I've got a signing at Barnes and Noble, at here in Camp Hill, and then I have a number of private events, book clubs, speaking engagements that I've booked, and am looking for more all the time.
How close are you to Erie, Pennsylvania?
Not very close. It's about a 6 hour drive, I want to say. If Pennsylvania looks like this, Erie is like over here, and
Mhm.
like I'm here in Carlisle. So,
Okay. I
but
asked,
I mean, then again, depending on what the opportunity is.
well, why I ask is because I'm collaborating with Pretty Good Books out of Ashtabula, Ohio.
Oh,
And
okay.
every year they do a book bash with 100 plus authors.
Oh, wow.
And they do it in like this huge church that's about 20 minutes from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And it's a good author networking place. You
Mhm.
do book signings, they have lots of people coming through, they have panels, and it's just kind of a good time, and they do it once a year,
Oh,
um
wow.
usually in April. They
Oh.
do it, and they start taking applications in November.
Oh, well, I mean,
So
with that kind of heads up, absolutely. I mean, I just build that in, to my schedule. So
yeah.
yeah, thanks for the heads up, because they're actually, I mean, and Ohio does have a hook because there is a section of Three Rivers Home that takes place in Bel Air, Ohio. So there
Okay.
is kind of a Ohio element, that kind of brings it in the hooks for both states.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, they start taking applications in November. I'll be posting the stuff onto my site,
Okay.
on my Facebook pages, and so keep an eye out for that because they're always looking, to bring back, of course, people who've been there before, but they're always looking for new people and expanding. And it kind of gets bigger every year. Like this last year, there were food vendors there, and there were different artists there, selling their stuff or just kind of playing around. Like there was a woman there who, for $10, you could kind of bedazzle your book.
Oh my.
And no, but I mean, it was really fun. And some of the kids who were there, and because they have every genre of book there,
Hmm.
but some of the kids were there, took advantage of that, and it was really fun for them. But yeah, and they had panels up front, and it was just a big event. And like next year, I'm going to be doing a live podcast
Ooh.
from there, and kind of just walking around and chatting with people, and you know kind of just having fun with it. So I always kind of throw that out there when I'm doing this. If I know people are close by, or
Mhm.
if I know that they travel, like to travel.
Oh yeah. I mean, something like that is definitely doable with, you
Yes.
know, I mean, it's not, I mean, if you had told me this weekend, that's one thing, but like, yeah, April, I can plan that out. But yeah, thanks for that because I will definitely put that on the calendar. That's something that some friends of mine who have been at this a lot longer than I have made recommendations about getting out to those types of festivals, and I've
Mhm.
definitely taken that seriously. Like I said, I had an amazing time at the Pittsburgh Festival of Books. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I owe Carnegie Library. I mean, I was glad to do it because it was good for me, but it was also great to give back to that institution because I spent so many hours in the Carnegie Library in Oakland. I mean, I spent, in fact, actually one Thanksgiving break, I went, I think it was in, it had to have been before Jillian was born. So yeah, it was probably like 2011, around that same time that it had to be actually around that same time because that was the year that I had discovered when my all the stuff about the fire. I went to Pittsburgh for Thanksgiving. I camped out with my cousins at their house, and I basically spent 3 days in Allegheny or in the Carnegie Library in their microfiche room with my roll of dimes, just like every third newspaper, every third reel, I was, making a copy and making a copy. But I found some amazing things there and all the different materials and collections they have in the Pennsylvania room and the genealogy libraries and old books, and I mean just a wealth of information. And so it was really nice to be able to come back and with the fruit of all that research.
Well, outside of being a writer, which kind of sounds like it is a big chunk of your life,
Yes.
um, you know, who are you? Away from the writing and in real life,
Mhm.
uh, who are you?
Well, I mean, I'm a mom, definitely. I mean, and I'm a wife. I mean, those two things are like on the same line, I mean, I love my husband, I love my daughter, the three of us. I love my family and my parents. I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, I'm a cousin and friend. I love supporting, especially my family. My daughter, she does activities, she fences, which is very cool, and
Okay.
she plays softball, and I was the assistant to the assistant coach this year on her softball team. And actually this copy that I read from the team at the end of the year, the coach, my friend Sarah, she got a copy and she had all the girls sign,
Mhm.
which was like super, super sweet. It was adorable. She gave it to me at the end of the year. And but I really love doing that. And I love being a help anywhere I can, with my friends or in my community. Uh, I do a lot of well, actually, because of my daughter's school requirements, I actually started doing a lot more volunteering. We
Mhm.
volunteer at the Cumberland County Historical Society together, she and I, which is a lot of fun. And then I don't know, although like writing might sound all encompassing, but it was always the thing that was fun for me. It was
Mhm.
always the thing that I came back to again and again. We moved a couple of times when I was a kid, and I mean,
I
you
mean, it was
start,
certainly your calling.
yeah, and I don't know. I guess I don't know why I was lucky enough to be one of those kids that sort of knew what they wanted to do from the earliest age. My daughter is like that. She wants to be a paleontologist. That has not changed since she was 3, and I don't
Nice.
think it's going to change anytime soon. So I don't know. It does kind of give you something to shoot for when you're going through school. But and I read. I mean, I read a lot. If I'm not writing, I'm reading and researching and finding different things. I like to watch TV shows. I'm a huge fan of Saturday Night Live. So I love watching the show. I especially love the first 5 years, so I watch a lot of vintage episodes, a lot of trivia and things like that. So I don't know. I just like to think that I try and be the best version of myself wherever I can. I hope that I make, that level, but I try my best to be the best mom and wife and citizen I can be.
You said that you like to read. What was the last book that you read that made you wish you had written it?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I write some good ones. I'm sitting here looking at my TBR stack. That's the ones I haven't read yet. Well, I mean, anything by Fiona Davis makes me inspired. I love her writing. I get lost in her books. She's one of those authors where I get the new one off the shelf, and God help me if I didn't have to go to work the next morning, I'd be reading it all that first night. Um, and Lisa Wingate also. I mean, before we were yours was a comp that I used when I was, pitching the book. I mean, I loved that. And was it the Book of Lost Names? And I haven't read the new one yet, but I mean, some of those folks that have written those types of stories, I love those books. And oh boy, I'm just trying to think if there's anybody else. I feel like as soon as we hang up, I'm going to remember, like, 16 books that I read. I tell you, I'm a rereader, especially like childhood types of things. So somebody actually, I saw, because I follow Ann Patchett on TikTok and her Parnassus books, and she brought up, if you haven't read it, it's new to you, which is a feature on TikTok, and she brought up A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And I mean, I read that book over and over and over again as a kid. And I don't know, when she brought it up, I sort of realized, oh, there's a little bit of that in Three Rivers Home. I would never compare myself to that, American classic, but one of the things I loved about A Tree Grows in Brooklyn was how Betty Smith took you right to that city street. You could feel Brooklyn all around you, and you could feel that it was coming from someone who loved and, you know, struggled with the city in the same way that Francie did. And maybe, hopefully, I got a little bit of that in there too, in Three Rivers Home.
Well, I appreciate everything that you have, shared with us tonight. Um, we are going to wrap this up here.
Yeah,
But before I let you go, can you let everybody know where they can find you online and more importantly, where they can find your book?
absolutely. So you can order Three Rivers Home from the Sunbury Press Books website. It's available there online. All you have to do is search for my name, Lara Brenckle Malmont, and that's what I am all the way or all across social media. It's Lara Brenckle Malmont on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. Uh, I'm Laura Brinkle on X. I'm not really on that platform too much anymore, but if people find me there, that's okay. And then I'm also on Goodreads and Amazon. Three Rivers Home is available on Amazon for purchase as a physical book. It is also on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. And then it is available anywhere you buy books. If your bookstore or your local bookseller doesn't have it, it is available for order because it's on the main, I think it's four major wholesalers that can get that book to any bookstore in the country, and then libraries too. So
Perfect. Well, I just want to thank you again for coming and being on my show and sharing your journey. It's been quite the journey.
it has been, and it's kind of amazing that I'm here now. But I think, like anybody who might be listening to this and wondering is going to happen for me, one of the things I sort of always say, we've got two mottos in our family. One comes from my husband: you can't wrestle if you don't weigh in. So nothing happens if you don't do nothing. And then the other one is mine, which is why the hell not? Why the hell not? Why not you? Why not anybody? Give it a shot, keep working on it, and maybe someday they'll be on here now next with you.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you. I hope you have the right, you know, I know what I want to say, and my brain and my mouth is starting to disconnect. But I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.